And I feel like in life, so many times, the thing that you're actually worried about is not what's going to happen on the day at all. Something else will come up, something else will rear its ugly head, and you're going to have to deal with that. And you won't even care about the thing that you were worried about at the time.
Welcome back to another episode of the You to You podcast series, where I am chatting with like-minded individuals that are achieving their goals and accomplishing the things that they're setting their heart out to do. And the man that I am sitting next to has achieved a lot. I've been on a journey with him for quite some time. I've known him since the rapping days, and now we're at the book stage. I want to unpack everything, where he is right now, but obviously more important to how he got there. So Matthew Zull, welcome to the podcast. And also we're in his radio shack.
Yeah.
This is awesome. We just got off the radio. I might just put that segment in before this starts.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to share. I don't really take the time to stop and think about where I'm at or what I might have done. So it's fantastic to sort of put a line in the sand or like a timestamp and go, right, I'm here. Let's reflect back. And I'm glad that you've had me on. So thank you.
No, I think that's like a reflection of what you just said then is like, I work in the construction industry, and between planning stages to everything of handover and the clients getting what they want, there is milestones that need to be achieved. And the only way that you can reflect on where you've come, where you are, is where you've come from. And it's nice to be able to, be, I guess, on the receiving end to talk about, man, what you've accomplished with this book. Because after reading it, I mean, I've known you for a long time. But to be honest, like when you were talking about the stuttering and everything that you went through, I'm like, dude, I never knew.
People don't have really any idea of what goes on. So just to bring people up to speed, I have a stutter, or I had a stutter. Don't really know how to phrase it, but for most of my life, I'm 38 years old now. Up until the age of 34, I was living as an undercover stutterer, you could say. Somebody who, like, I knew I've got this stutter and words might not come out. And it would get worse around situations where I'm worried that certain words might be coming up or people will be looking at me. And my biggest fear was that people would find out that I had a stutter, or if I just did a bad stutter in front of them, whoever that might be, partner, friends. If I'm in high school and I get asked to speak in front of the class or something, that was the most petrifying thing ever. And then in recent years, up until age 34, so at about 2020, was when I finally decided I need to confront this and take it on, because I can't keep living like this. It was insane. 90% of the day, like most of the day, my brain was filled with worrying about speech, asking questions about why my stutter is what it is, asking about how I can improve or what tricks I can do, what band-aid fixes I can use to just make it through the day. I've had days where I get to like 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. and I'm so tired, and I'm like, why am I tired? I mean, sitting around at work doing nothing all day. And then I realize it's because mentally I've been just going hammer and tong in my brain about, will I stutter on this word? What if I do that technique? What if that person thinks this? What if she picks up that I'm a stutterer? How will I explain myself? You know that thing you do where you go, if I do this, this person will react like that. Then I'll react like this, and then they'll probably say that. So then I'll just say this. My life was lived like that. Hypotheticals. One thing one story is when you think that something will happen and you're so worried about it, and you've gone that 4 or 5 steps past of like, I'll say this, then they'll say that, then this will happen. I was in class, and because I'm Zull, right? Like, I'm last in the alphabet. So I'm always going to be safe. Someone A is going to go first, Anderson, and then whoever, and I'm always last. So there's a few times in class where the teacher will go, today we're just going to reverse the alphabet. And I'm like, no, I've got to read. And then you should see my ability to scan a page for words that are troublesome for me. I know straight away that word's coming and I'm just panicking about it. Strange, because the rest of the words become easier to say, but that one becomes so much harder. I don't know whether it's ingrained in me or I was just born with it, or whether it is a condition that sort of became more of a real condition the more that I worried about it, like a self sort of perpetuating thing. But I basically broke the cycle in 2020, and it felt, it's just so many mixed emotions. I can just keep on explaining my story.
That's what we're unpacking. So don't stop explaining, because the more that you explain and you get off, and like, not everybody's read the book, so it's that backstory allows us to figure out, you know, how you got here.
Well, to understand more about the backstory, I need to explain the stutter itself. So generally, words that have a hard start, so I'd say words that start with certain letters are harder for me to say. I'm building up the confidence or courage right now just to have a crack at them, even though I'm saying them while I'm explaining it. But words that start with a D or G or a B, even then I went like a B, they're like, there's like no air, and then you just start with a B or a D, and they're sort of a hard start, if that makes sense. And over my life, I've just noticed a pattern that when I attempt to say these words, sometimes they don't come out, or I block, and I'll just put, and then I get forced to make a decision in the moment. Do I persist through that block? It could take 5 seconds, which is a long time if you're talking to someone in a job interview or someone at work, and then they might think, oh, is this guy okay? Does he need some water? Should I give him a pat on the back? And then I have to make a decision. Should I just persist with it? Should I change what I'm saying completely? Should I change my mind up about the content that I was saying? Or do I find an alternative way to say the same point? So the easiest way is to not say anything at all. Just, if I think I'll stutter, just avoid speaking completely. The next way is to change the word to something else that means the same thing. So I could say, if I wanted to say house, I could just say home. They're kind of interchangeable words. If I wanted to say, here we go, going to the pub, I could change it to heading to the pub. No one's going to notice. It means the same thing, but I know every time I avoid saying that word, I'm making the problem worse.
Yeah, the callus is not going away.
That's right. It's getting harder and harder. So I have been using these techniques. One technique that I used was to get out those harder sounds, was to breathe all the way out. So, and then speak on this last bit of breath, because for whatever reason, the words just come out easier. So people might think I'm straining a little bit, but it's, I might have something in my throat, or I'm just coughing a little bit, or I've got a bit of hay fever, and they don't really ask questions. So I used that for many, many years. I had, friends with unavoidable names. Benny Saunders, Dale, Darren, right? And I would invent nicknames for them that were easier to say than their actual name. All this is all happening in my brain 24/7, but I'm managing to just be a normal, friendly guy, got friends and relationships and all sorts of stuff. It's like I'm carrying around this big secret behind the scenes. So this goes on, and it got to 2010 where I decided enough is enough. I went to my parents. I was like, it's one of the few times I've sort of spoken to my parents. I'd say, talk to my parents about it. And they're the only people in the world I talked to about it. I talked to about my stutter. I did that about 3 times or maybe 5 times over my life until about 2010. And when I was like, Mum, I need to get some speech therapy because I just can't keep going. Like it is devouring my brain and my life. So went to a speech therapist in Fairfield somewhere, and they said to me, you need to learn slow, smooth speech. So to give an example of how this works, it's soft onset, clacker, Matthew Zull, and you got to speak it one syllable per second. One syllable per second. So I said, okay, does this mean this is how I practice? And then I'll just get fluent. And she goes, oh, no, that's how you speak from now on, around the clock. And over time, you get faster and more fluent. I'm like 24 years old, you know? I'm out there skateboarding and playing music. I'm not just going to all of a sudden stop with this lifestyle and start speaking in this robotic way. So I sort of abandoned that and just kind of made the choice of like, I'm just going to have to persist with this stutter, and that's just how life is. Keeps going for a few years, and I start working at this place where this guy turned up called Stu, and he's got a stutter. He's got a clear stutter. And I knew right away, because I analyze everyone's speech. I've analyzed your speech. I know how people in my life, I know how you speak. If you've got a slight lisp, if you've got anything, if your R's are a little bit, I don't know, strange, I'm on top of it, right? And so I knew right away he had a stutter, but I was so ashamed, embarrassed, you could say, that if I talked to him about it or brought it up, I would feel so uncomfortable and so bad, and so like I'm letting out this big secret that he would feel upset and embarrassed about it as well. So 2 or 3 years went by where every day I wanted to just talk to him, but something was holding me back, man. Like, looking back at it now, it's so stupid. Like, get it off the chest and it's dealt with. The mental stuff goes away and you can just proceed with your life and getting to where you need to be, right? Years went by, 3 or 4 years. So he left the company. And when he left, I had this moment of like, oh, I've missed my chance. And then I friended him on Facebook, and I noticed he was putting up these call outs to this stuttering camp that they do up in Sydney. You go up there for like 2 weeks, you spend about $5,000 or something. It's intensive. They get stutterers changing their mindset, and you just go into the deep end, right? I was like, fantastic. So I contacted him, and in the end he said he doesn't use it anymore because they have changed the management. It's not the same program. It isn't the same teachers. So I was spewing. I was like, that was my ticket out of all of this mental carry on. I can just do this. But no, it didn't happen. But then he said to me, hey, why don't you just come to my house? We'll have a beer, we'll have a chat, and we can see what we can do. I was like, fantastic. There is nothing to lose. So I go to his house and I sit down with him, and he says, mate, listen, I can tell where you're at. Your brain that's fried. Like, you're going nuts I'm like, mate, you're telling me. Even I was on the verge of tears rocking up to his house because I was so worried about what he might think or say. He was calm. He was basically like, yeah, mate, I've seen this before. I've been there. I know you're sick. Like, it's fine. And then he goes, I've got this guy that I think might be a good match for you called Chris. I was like, great. I'll do anything at this stage. So I called him up on like a Tuesday night. I was like expecting him to not answer or just be a bit of, blunt, mate, who even are you calling me? This guy answers the phone, talks to me for like 45 minutes. And he just talked. It was basically him explaining my mindset and my brain to me exactly how it works. I was freaked out. I was like, did this guy know me? Like, has he been spying on me? Is he inside my brain? I like had some tears coming out of my eyes talking to him on the phone. I didn't tell him at the time because I was just so embarrassed and so overwhelmed. I remember Tash, my partner, in the kitchen, because we had a 6-month-old at the time. She's like, so get off the phone. I'm cooking dinner. Hurry up. I'm on the verge of tears, like going, I'm having a life-changing
I've just met my Yoda.
yeah. You can wait. I don't even care. This is incredible. So I said to him, let me just come to your house. I need to sit down with you. I need to chat. So 2 weeks later, I went to his house, sits me down in his lab. He's a guitar teacher, and he's got this mirror against the wall on this angle, sits me down in a chair, and he goes, look at yourself in the mirror. And I'm like, okay. It's like that old school, have a long, hard look at yourself in the mirror, right?
Yeah.
So I look at myself in the mirror. It goes for about 30 seconds, nothing happens. Gets to a minute, nothing happens. I'm like, this is weird. Why am I looking at the mirror in this guy's house to fix my speech? This is not going to fix anything other than me getting to know the pores on my skin, right? And so I kind of like look at him and I'm like, mate, what's the deal? And he goes, just keep looking. So I keep looking. After about 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes, which is a long time, just this emotion just comes out of me. Like, I don't know, tingling, just almost shaking. It was almost like one of those, like those Christian pastors and they're going like, and they're all falling over and everyone's going nuts.
Yeah.
I was almost like that. I was just like, I don't know what to do. And I was just crying, like emotion pouring out of me. And I looked around and he's like, just keep looking. And I kept looking. And then after it all calmed down, I was like, mate, what is going on? I'm here to sort my speech out.
What did you give me?
You've got me crying. Yeah, like did you spike my drink or something? And he goes, no, what's happened here is, right, you've been worried your whole life. Worried, fear, like this insane amount of fear every day, 24 hours a day, you're thinking about it. He says to me, you've probably woken up during the night worrying about your stutter. I'm like, all the time, yeah? It's always on my mind. And he goes, what's happened today is you've actually looked at yourself from this outside perspective back at yourself, not from your own internal worry about how the stutter works, but from an outside perspective, just looking at you as a human, as a physical person, and not making that connection into the mind. And there's two forces at play. This one that's overwhelmed and is so worried about things that may or may not even happen. And then this other one looking and going, it's just a guy sitting there on a chair. And then it can't marry itself up. And then it realizes it's the same person. And the emotion just doesn't release. And he goes, now that we've got that out of the way, and you can mentally understand that the fear only exists in here, you can move on. We can start to look at the speech now. I was like blown away by the whole thing. And then it made me think back to all the speech therapy that I'd done. That was all to do with the physical aspect. What Chris told me was the physical aspect is 10% of the problem. He said 90% of it is under the water. Hence the cover of this book, I put the iceberg on there, right? Because the stutter, the physical bit that people hear that I try to say in a or whatever, that is just the bit above the water that people can see. But under the water, it is carry on. It's so much mental anguish. And it's worry that isn't even warranted half of the time. You know that thing of like, if you're super worried and nervous about something happening, and then in the moment it fails or it went wrong because you were so nervous, right? You would rather be in that moment and not nervous to have more control. So many times I would worry myself into a stupor, and the only reason that a stutter happened was because I was so nervous at the start. But while I was being nervous, nothing had even happened yet. And as I was saying before with that reversing the alphabet thing, like it was great for me when that happened in a way, because I'd be worried that I'd have to read for class, right? If I knew a week before, Matt, next Friday, you'll be reading out to the class. That's going to give me a week to worry. I'm going to be petrified. Should I call in sick? Should I make an excuse? How will I read the words? What am I going to do when I get to that D sound? But if on the day I don't expect to read, I haven't been worried all week. Mind's clear. Then I get thrown in there and then, Matt, read now. Well, at least my last week was great, and I'm a bit more in control.
Yep.
So I just got to get on with it there and then. That's basically what happened with my transformation with Chris. Now, he's given me techniques as well to work on my speech. So we're going to get to that in a minute, but I thought I'd fast forward to now, because what I'm doing now is I wrote this book about my story. So
great book.
Yeah.
It's the backstory and learning more about you and like this everything that was underneath the water. This is what I want to unpack, because I feel not only people out there with a stutter that they're worried about it, it's just kind of like stop stopping yourself from doing the thing that you really want to do because you're fearful of not making people happy. Because you're not going to make people happy. You're not going to make everybody happy. The people you're going to make happy are the people that you want in your community, in your tribe. So to continue.
Yeah, so going back, looking at that kind of thing about what I was like back in the day, there's a story in there that I share. I went for a job interview in 2013. So my friend Will Twin was working for Sportsbet. He was doing like soccer trading and tennis trading. And he was telling me that, well, he was showing me photos. He's got this, like his desk at work had about 5 or 6 screens. It's like tennis, rugby, cricket, this and that. He's doing the odds. And he goes, oh, look at my work desk. I was like, I like sport. I'm a big fan of sports. And I was like, that was like the dream. Yeah. This is a fantastic job. So he says to me, I already know the people interviewing you. I know that you love sport. I know that you can handle this job easily, right? So they send me like this written test, and I go and do this written test. It's all like numbers and intricate stuff, and I passed that with flying colors. So they invited me to do an interview on the phone. Get this phone interview, and I know it's coming because they're going to ask me specific things. Facts that I can't change. I can't just change words around if they ask me, what was the score in this game? What was this player? So they ask me who's on top of the English Premier League. I knew the team was my team, Arsenal, and it starts with the vowel, which for me is kind of nice to say. Arsenal just rolls off the tongue. But they asked me who was the number 1 tennis player in the world in the women's side. The answer was Serena Williams. And I knew because I was looking at the screen, it said Serena Williams. I had all of the cheat sheets up and I went to say it and it was like, and that E just wouldn't come. So I look down the list, who's next in line? Victoria Azarenka. And because of the way my mind was at this stage, I just went to the next easiest thing to say that was still a tennis player that would make me not seem like I had a stutter. So I just said Victoria Azarenka. And then he goes to me, are you sure? And I go, yeah. And he goes, no, mate, are you sure? Because he could tell that I tried to say Serena Williams. Like he knew exactly, and I knew exactly. But this other conversation that was really happening in real life, I just said the wrong answer on purpose because I wanted to save face and be a fluent speaker. And that was far more important to me at the time than getting the job right or whatever. So I knew I left that in that moment. I'd lost the job. I was never going to work in that field, basically, I thought, because that was my way in if I wanted to work with my friend. And I got off the phone and I felt just so like hollow and empty. Like I knew I'd cheated myself. I cheated my friend. He'd gone out of his way to give me this opportunity to talk to the interviewers to recommend me. And then I couldn't even get the number 1 tennis player's name right, who was on my screen. He'd even told me to make sure you've got these things ready because it was for tennis, it was for soccer. I felt like an idiot. And he asked me, how was the interview? And I was like, oh, it was okay. We'll see how we go. Just gave me like a generic sort of thing. And I'm like, it just felt horrible. Like I knew. And then I just swept the whole thing under the rug and just continued on like that with life. And that was basically what my attitude was for so long. But then fast forwarding to now, I've launched in the other way. So the main lesson that Chris told me was stutterers get worried about stuttering, and what they're trying to do is just maintain a base level that is just not stuttering, right? So a win or being in the right or achieving for me was just not stuttering and just not being perceived as someone who has a stutter. That was a win. That was like heaven, right? But after 2020 and talking to Chris, he was basically like, you need to start thinking about communication. It's like, forget about whether you have a stutter or not. Start learning how to communicate. And he goes, that will take care of stuttering. That will take care of this fear. Just start learning about communication. And I said, but mate, I've got a stutter. Like, therefore I can't, do things where I speak, where there's lots of speaking involved. I just can't be doing those things. I'm just not qualified. And he says to me, mate, there are fluent speakers at my work who can speak fluent. They can think of a word and say it. However, I can't get a word out of them. They're boring. They don't know how to talk. They don't use vocal variety, or they don't tell me stories. They've got this tool there, but they don't use it. And he goes, you at least smile when you talk to me. He's like, in terms of communication, I ask you something, you give me something back. You're interesting to speak to. I was like, oh my God, okay. So then he says to me, his main advice, and this just resonates with like so many different areas of my life, was he said, you need to go out and face up to your fear and put yourself directly in the line of sight. And I was like, what do you mean? He says, you need to go and stutter deliberately in front of other people. And I looked at him, I was like, why on earth would somebody who's afraid of stuttering want to go and speak and stutter in front of random people? Like, I'm going to feel terrible. They're going to feel a bit uncomfortable as well. He said, that's the whole point. He said, that's exactly why, because it's the thing that you're most afraid of doing. It's what you most need to do. I didn't get it. And then I went and I actually did it. And I've done it multiple times. The first time I did it, it took me about 3 months to build up the courage. I walked into multiple shops. I was like, right, today's the day. I'm just gonna do this. Walked in, you know that whole walk in, and then just walk out. Did that multiple times. And then one day I was working down in a construction site in Richmond and walked into this shop. I was nervous. I was like shaking. It's like 6 a.m. in the morning opposite Richmond train station. Made sure it was clear. There was only one girl in the shop and me. I walked in and I'm like, oh God, she's going to think I'm crazy. Go to the counter and I just sold the biggest stutter, like far beyond anything I've ever done in my life. I was like, I was closing my eyes. I was straight like 3/4 latte, please. And I'm expecting this shock and horror from her. And she just goes, is that card or cash? And I'm like still shaking. I'm like, I didn't even know what to say because I didn't even think that far ahead. I was like, oh yeah, shit, I'll just pay with my card, thanks. Paid. And then she just casually goes back to the coffee machine and like she's singing the music that's on in the shop, like da, 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 da. My mind was just blown away. I got my coffee. I didn't even want the coffee. The coffee was irrelevant. All I'm thinking about is my mind, and something just changed in my brain. I walked out. I remember just walking to the work, and the whole way I was like floating down the street, just like, maybe this whole thing about worrying and fear and everything doesn't need to exist. And maybe it just happens in here. Like maybe my stuttering problem of 34 years and this mental turmoil I've put myself through, I just didn't have to do it, or at least not to the level that I did, because it was insane. It was insane.
Some can argue that, but I would reflect on it in a different way, is that it required you were the person that the universe, the simulation selected for this specific mission reason, you know, because now you have the capabilities. You're now the next Chris. Yeah?
Yes.
You are now the next torchbearer to allow other individuals like yourself. And the more that you speak about it, the more people you're going to touch. Now, this is just a little cattle. This is like, you think this is the fucking big part of your mission, this existence, man. Like doors are gonna, like how many doors started to open?
It's so true.
Because like even reflecting back on the job, you know, there are so many people out there, and this is not just revolving around stuttering. It's revolving around not taking the chance, and facing the fear. What it's like, the success is in the work you're not doing, you know. And I love the quote in the book: "People feel the rain, others just get wet." Yeah. Just like the fear that stops people from achieving is the people on their deathbeds, and they go, "I wish I had done more."
That regret, right? That if I had have just launched it, if I had have taken that chance, that makes me think straight away. So he gave me that advice, and then some things happened, and it sticks with me because I'm a big fan of that sort of practice what you preach, right? So I got asked to do a speech at this lady's church in East Melbourne a couple of years ago, and it went for like 40 minutes. It was like the longest speech that I've done at the time. And I went there and I wanted to explain that story about putting myself in that situation. And I thought, I can't rock up there if I'm not doing this right now. So that week I made it my mission, once in the morning, once at night, to go out and find people to stutter in front of. And again, I went to this post office And I asked the woman, what's the jackpot? The biggest stutter ever. And again, just calmly answers, $20 million tonight. And I'm like, and isn't someone going to care? Like, no one cared. You're right about this passing on the baton or becoming the authority kind of thing. One day at Chris's, I did sessions with him for about a year at his house. And one day I was driving home and I was like, wouldn't the ultimate dream of somebody who struggled with stuttering for like 35 years, wouldn't the dream be to become like a communications coach? Like, imagine teaching people how to communicate, even though you have a stutter. It's like the irony of the whole thing, but it can be done, and not so much around the stutter. I still feel like I can have a stutter and still provide value to those who don't. And so Chris had mentioned one of his friends from his stuttering course who had joined this program or this club called Toastmasters. And he said that this guy had been there and he'd done public speaking. And I'm like, again, I was like, why the hell would I want to do public speaking? Like, it's the last thing on my list. It terrifies me. Imagine getting up in front of a class, which has happened to me many times. I remember being in university doing a microeconomics class. There's about 50 people in there. I hadn't prepared and I was just going to wing it with some PowerPoint slides, and I fell apart. I was just stuttering, changing words, breathing in and out. People must be looking at me like, this guy is on another planet. That was another low moment of my stuttering. But yeah, Chris was pretty much like learning to communicate, right? Like understanding that it's not just about not stuttering, but learning about communication. And his friend had been at Toastmasters and he'd won some speech prizes, like public speaking contests. I was like, that is even a concept. You can battle other people in public speaking and communication. I was like, and this guy's got a stutter and he went and done it and he won a prize. So about 6 months passed and I go to Chris, what's this thing you were talking about, this public speaking thing? I'm petrified, but I need to do it. Like, I've been having these little wins and every time I've pushed myself, I need to do it. Around this time, I decided I would make my decision-making process easy, because the amount of excuses people can give themselves and the amount of excuses I gave myself and reasons why I couldn't do this or I shouldn't do that over the years was insane. Got to this point where I was like, I've talked to Stu, I've talked to Chris, I've gone and started in front of people. It's time to just marry this all up and make the decision-making process easier. Came to a line. If it involves communication and it scares me, I'm in. So if it's someone's asking me, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you come and speak on this? Can you talk? You should join this. I'm like, rather than umming and ahhing, I'm there. Where are we going? What are we doing?
You're a yes man.
Yeah, I was just yes. And I pretty much still am now. So Chris goes, yeah, there's this program called Toastmasters. And he goes, I've never attended. I've never been there. I should just quickly explain a technique that he's taught me. It's called the diaphragmatic breath or the costal breath. So it's basically a belly breath, a hard, sharp breath into the diaphragm. And then on those hard starts, D, you breathe out quickly and say it. So the way I'm meant to speak, and I get into bad habits still, but I should, is when I'm approaching one of these words, I should take my time, slow down, and I should use that technique and start hard with that breath coming out fast. So I said attending Toastmasters was kind of a changed word. I should have said had been to Toastmasters would have been a better way to shrink the iceberg underneath the water. So I rock up to this Toastmasters club petrified, like I'm going in there to publicly speak in front of like 20 people. And on the first night, they were like, would you like to get up and speak? I was like, if it involves communication that scares me, I mean, absolutely, let's go. So I get up there. They just asked me some random question. I spoke for about a minute and a half, just off the top of my head. I got off and I was sitting down. I was almost shaking, like, what the hell just happened? And fast forward 2 years, I'm now the president of the Nillumbik Toastmasters Club. And there are people coming up to me for advice. Oh, Matt, I'm worried about this. What's the technique? How do I do public speaking? I've had some members of this club over the last year who have been really struggling with the fear of public speaking. Some that I've seen have, not come to meetings. They've told me they're sick, but maybe they just don't want to speak. And there's these kind of things happening. And I look back to myself and I'm like, they might not have a stutter, but they're facing the same fears and the same patterns that I was. And even though I still get up there and, every week when I speak there, there'll be some stutter, there'll be some little bit at some point. But I know now, these are just minor little blips and things that happen.
They're honestly, you probably should start thinking that it's like, people want to see that, because it's kind of like you're still the true self.
It's the humanizing.
That resonates with people. Don't get me wrong, fluently is what you've always achieved for. But now the understanding is that, man, this is like the key for other people to go, he could fucking help me.
Yes.
I want your colleague that you never, you didn't chat to till later on. You went for so long, he could have opened up this door. And you can never know. We don't have a time machine. Where you could be, where you are, doesn't matter. You are here right now. So it's like with trying to, hide or cover, like you said, shrink that us, but it's not even that, man. It's like, to be honest, it's like, do it more, because the more that you do it, but it's the communication part. Yeah. It's someone seeing you up there going, wow, how can Matt do that? Yeah. How can I get the skills off Matt?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna trip over my words here and there. I trip over my words all the goddamn time.
Yeah.
This. The only reason I want to do this podcast, like one of the reasons, is to get better at talking, because it's kind of like that skill of communication is so vital. Storytelling, just like we were talking about.
The only way you'll improve is by doing it more and more.
And the more people that you can showcase that, it's kind of like, man, it's no one gives. Yeah, like no one cares. Yeah, and not only that, we're living in a day and age where things last for 24 hours on a story. Yeah, I don't know what happened last week.
It doesn't matter.
Who cares? Yeah. Today's the day. Yeah. Man. I'm going to go to bed. Tomorrow's going to be the day.
Yeah,
the fearfulness is cripples people.
These lessons that I've learned. So it's kind of like I realize now I needed to have those stepping stones, that going to Toastmasters, Chris taking me through those things before I could get into these things like communication and speaking. So opportunity came around last year, and my dad is a member of the Brunswick Hockey Club, and he was telling me, we've got this 100-year dinner, and it was taking up all his time. So he's researching all the history of the club, talking to my mum about the whole thing. Then he says to me, hey, listen, your name came up because we got like 350 people coming to the Moonee Valley racecourse, and we're looking for an MC for the night. And he goes, oh, you've been doing communication training. How do you feel? Would you think you'd be up for being the MC? Instantly, I'm like, this is my thought process. Brunswick Hockey Club, Centenary Gala, dinner. GD. That's my first thought. I'm like, nah, I'm going to have to get up there and say a G word and a D word at some point during the speech. Like, that hasn't even factored in anything else. That's my thought. I'm like, no. Then I was like, hold on a minute, Matt. If it involves communication and it scares you, you're doing it. So I go, Dad.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Dad, sign me up. When's the date? Just the attitude. And I was like, I don't know how I'll do this. I don't know. I've done a little bit of this training at Toastmasters. I'll be fine. Let's just make it happen. At worst, this will be the best learning curve that I do, right? So I went full in. They had an organizing committee. There was about 8 people that met every week for about 6 weeks that joined in on that. They're giving me ideas. Can you run a panel? Can you introduce these politicians? Can you do all this stuff? I'm like, sure, let's do it. So I'm researching it all. I'm writing my scripts. I'm practicing. Got it done. On the night, I was nervous, but I did the right things. I got there early. I felt out the room. I got on stage. I'd learn all these lessons. People start coming in. You know what? I was worried about my speech, my stutter. This is a valuable lesson for so many things in life. I got myself worked up about one thing, whether I would stutter or not. That was my main concern. But something came from the side that threw me out. That changed my worry, like my worry area to something completely different. On the run sheet, it said, start the speeches at 7:10, right? So at 7, I'm supposed to give a 10-minute warning, and then at 7:05, 5-minute warning. 7 o'clock. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this event. Please start making your way to your tables. There's 350 people in there. They're talking and seeing their friends for ages. 7:05, ladies and gentlemen, get to your tables. 7:10, ladies and gentlemen. 7:12, 7:15, 7:18. I'm trying to get on them. I'm trying to be loud. I'm getting everyone. And like, all of a sudden, the stuttering didn't matter. It was like, if we can just do anything now and we get on, that's what we need to do. So I'd spent weeks worrying about whether I'm going to stutter on this G or this D. All of a sudden, it's irrelevant if I can't even talk to people. And I feel like in life, so many times, the thing that you're actually worried about is not what's going to happen on the day at all. Something else will come up, something else will rear its ugly head, and you're going to have to deal with that. And you won't even care about the thing that you were worried about at the time. And I've learned very quickly through these MC gigs and speaking that aiming at this sort of 80% target, 75 to 80% of happy with that's how it went, is fantastic. That's a great place to be at. And expect a mistake. Expect a big howler.
And want to have a mistake.
Yeah.
Like, don't, like, I think, not that I don't prepare, but I learn from not preparing. I'd rather learn on the fly. The skill set in the toolbox that I bring with me every time, it's like, it doesn't exist on paper. It exists up here.
Yeah.
Just go and make the mistake, yeah?
You're going to learn.
You're skilled enough.
In that heat of the moment, you're going to learn stuff very, very quickly.
And if you stuff up real bad, guess what? You're really not going to do that again.
You're really
so
the
harder that you stuff up, the harder you fall down. Yeah, you're going to be like, okay, cool. Next time, I ain't going to do that. Yeah?
I'm looking forward to the next time I introduce a politician onto stage, because I introduced 3 politicians and I thought, you know what? They're important people. They hold this kind of office and rah, rah. So I said to them, well, they knew before the night. They had 3 minutes to speak. One guy spoke for about 14 minutes, right? Me being the MC, the president's looking at me like, get him off the stage. And I'm like, I don't know. And I ended up walking on stage awkwardly and standing next to him and being like, okay, mate, like, you have to go. But in hindsight, now that I know, after 3 minutes, I'll shamelessly walk up, put my arm around the guy and literally drag. I'll just say, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. It's been, you know, MP, Mikey, whoever, and he's coming now off the stage. Please put your hands together.
And they knew that they had 3 minutes, yeah? So now he's seen what he can get away with. So,
you've got to keep them accountable. And I feel like, yeah, that was not part of my plan to be concerned on that. And then afterwards, I was like, timing. And I should be fearful of timing. That should be my number one worry.
Stuttering. Looking after other human beings. Yeah. You're so stressed about looking after yourself, and you've got this herd of cattle in there. You're like, man, come on. Come on. Hey. Jennifer, stop talking. Yeah. Put the champagne down.
It's a real problem.
Dealing with other humans
it's a real problem. So I've been doing this communication stuff and just launching in. I've sort of turned the tables right around. I've come onto this radio station, 88.6 Plenty Valley FM. It's a community radio.
Guys.
we're in this lab right now at the radio station through Greg Van Mewen, who's another host at this radio station, but he's a friend of mine through my hockey club. And he said to me, you should come on to the radio station to promote your book and have a chat to me, play some music. And when I did, he said, why don't you just do your own show? Again, I was like, oh, life and kids and speaking and stuff. Yes, I will. So I went and signed up to the training for like a 10-week course. My partner, Tash, is probably filthy on me about the whole thing, but I managed to make it squeeze in 6 to 8 a.m. Friday. And it's literally speech therapy for me. Putting myself in a predicament where I know there's potentially however many people out there listening, and I'll be listening to it myself later on for quality control and feedback to learn. It's a form of speech therapy for me every week. It's because I'm putting myself into a potential situation where the button might not work, or I might stutter, or something might happen, and I'm going to have to deal with it. And then I feel like when these situations come up and people ask me to do an MC gig or something happens, well, I've dealt with these little situations. I deal with them all the time. So I've got coming up, I'm emceeing a function at Welcome to Thornbury coming up in about 2 weeks' time, about 100 people there. And I already know the music won't work at some point. A microphone's going to cut out. Someone will heckle me like what's happened before. And I'm going to be ready. I know there'll be some awkwardness and stuff, but rather than going like, oh my God, that's awkward, it's going to be the end of the world, people are going to think I'm an idiot and they hate me and rah, 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 I'm going to be like, well, that happened. Excellent. And I'm going to be calm. I'm going to be like, that's fine. Water under the bridge. What's the next water that's coming? What's the next rapid? Like, that's cool, right? And I'll be calm enough to be aware in the situation. I won't be letting the fear drive me, because the nervousness and the fear found really alters what I do in the heat of the moment. And the more I do these things like Toastmasters or coming into the radio or whatever it is when it's almost like I'm kind of always warm. I'm always warm on that fear tip. Does that make sense?
You go into the gym every day. Yeah? You go to the gym every day. You're flexing that muscle. You're walking in, you're walking out. And then it's 1% every single day. Yeah, you don't go into the gym, lift for one day and then walk out looking like Arnie.
And then 6 months later, if you haven't been to the gym, 6 months later, if you do some weights, I can almost guarantee you can't walk the next day.
Yeah.
Or you're feeling it. Like the cricket. When I play backyard cricket, it's good speech therapy. Backyard cricket with my son. Because I've been playing all winter with him. I know that my elbow and shoulder will be fine when it comes to the cricket season. But if I don't play all season, I come into the backyard trying to rip a massive heater down the yard, I'm going to be sore the next
Leo
day.
gets hit in the head.
Yeah.
Dad, man, chill out, eh?
So it's like, yeah, staying sharp, right? Staying on top of that fear. And it's not so much the actual speaking or the communication. I'm pretty much doing like fear training. That's what it is.
And I just want to go back. What you said before we wrap this up, what you said before is that you've got now a skill set within this toolbox that you can communicate and teach other people, not only around stuttering, but it's what's the word? Like taking over your fear. You're giving people out there, you're going to have the ability to teach people to overcome their fears.
Yes, yeah.
Not only just in this stuttering world, because you look at this from a macro point of view. Anybody going out and wanting to do something, there is this, oh my God, it has to be perfect. Yeah. It has to be right. I can't take it to it.
Worry,
I want to start an app. I want to do personal training online. I want to become a photographer. I want to be a real estate agent. I want to be this. I want to be that. Where do I start? Fucking start.
It's overwhelming and you're worried, and then you start thinking yourself into a hole. I do it all the time. Like I've got my fingers in all these different pies of stuff. Like I do radio and I do hockey and I do Toastmasters and I do just all kinds of stuff. And I'm always like, I want to be like really great at something or one of them that it just plays on my mind. Like, should I be putting all my eggs into this basket? Should I be training harder with that? What if I want to just pivot and change and do something else? What if I want like a career change? What if I want to, and then it's like, hold on a minute, hold on. Just do these things. You know, some things will stick. Don't get too worried about the thought. The thought's not really going to help you. Once you do something, you'll learn pretty quickly how it works. I've been amazed with my radio show. I'm into my 18th or 19th week. And the first 2 or 3 was like, I had a picture in my head. I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to have this segment. I'm going to play it like that. My episode today was so different and so much better and easier and smoother just by doing it and showing up. This is a whole other thing. Showing up every week. Like for Toastmasters, I do my best to get to every single meeting. Bar if I've got a cold or I'm actually sick, I am there. I've moved like birthday parties. Like if my think it was like my mum's birthday was on the night and she had planned dinner. I was like, Mum, you need to move the dinner to the next night because I need to go to this. It's my fear. It's with me every day. So that's where I'm at. Yeah, like the decision's made. Showing up, I get a little bit better, a little bit less fear every time, a little bit. So once I break that cycle, I miss it for 1 month or 2 months. There's like this Christmas break for Toastmasters from December till about Feb. And I noticed it last year. I got to the middle of Jan, speech started going a little bit haywire. I was like, I need to get back training. So I went and found some other club and went out to the Eltham one and just went there.
Yeah, I was just about to say, like you're now, but now when you come to December this year, like that fear has been lessened, even by 1%. It's still lessened. So like the way I really like to sum up the podcast is you've told your story, but I guess if you can refine it and just talk down to the camera, talk specifically to someone that is in your position, that was in your position, and tell them, even though that you really have, but refine it to like just to like I'll let you roll with it, but essentially the fear side of things, go and chase their dreams.
Yeah. Whatever you're grappling with and you're thinking about changing or trying, the longer that you put off just doing the thing, the harder it will be for you at the time to make those adjustments. So for me, it was like, get in there and just rip the Band-Aid off and commit. Even if I tried it, the whole stuttering thing for 6 months or a year, and I realized it wasn't for me, at least I would know. And it's that whole idea of have a crack and start to do and start to action ASAP. Because you'll get direct feedback about where you're at, whether you like it. And it's going to mean the thing that you're most fearful of, you'll actually know whether you should be fearful of it or not. That's what I would say on that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. You do you. I love it.
Been an absolute pleasure.
King, that was fucking awesome, man. I really appreciate the
Thanks,
conversation.
That was really good.
Yeah.